Okay, so we're live, it looks like. Welcome everyone to our Black to the Ballot, Black History Month, District 9 candidate forum. We're so excited to be with you all tonight. My name is Bianca Cunningham. I'm the former co-chair of the NYC DSA, as well as one of the co-founders of the Afro-Socialist and Socialist of Color Caucus of the DSA. We are a network for the Black, POC, Indigenous members of the Democratic Socialists of America, and more broadly. We believe that capitalism exploits everyone, but Black people and people of color disproportionately suffer under it and its injustices. We believe socialism is the key to addressing the inequalities of capitalism, and we support reparations as well as any other programs that are for the liberation of Black people. We believe that when Black people are free, then everyone will be free. And so that's a little bit about the caucus. I'm so excited that we get to talk to these candidates tonight to hear their plans and their visions for communities of color, particularly to Harlem, but really all around New York City. And so first, I want to introduce our moderator for tonight. She's Tatiana Hill. She's a New York-based community organizer working to build political power with and for marginalized Black people, especially as it relates to ending mass incarceration and the systems that perpetuate it. Her advocacy work started as a labor organizer. She's one of the 2 original organizers that created the first union in any Verizon wireless store in the country. Woo woo. Tatiana works as a constituent advocate for the progressive Senator Jabari Brisport. Hill previously worked with Vocal New York, a grassroots power building organization where she organized and advocated for formerly incarcerated people and its civil rights union. Welcome, Tatiana.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I just want to welcome everyone tonight for joining us, particularly our candidates. This is a great forum and a space for our people to be heard, as well as for you to advocate for the issues that you're going to promote for our communities. So now I'm going to present the rules of the debate. Candidates will have 2 minutes each to introduce themselves. I will ask the question and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. If a candidate's name is invoked, they will have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. Questions will be asked in an alternating order. Candidates will have 1 minute each for closing statements. Before we get started, we'll hear opening statements from each candidate. We'll start with Mario, and you have 2 minutes.
All right, well, thank you for having me, everyone. And for those who are tuned in live, thank you for taking the time out of your evening to be here. My name is Mario Rosser. My mom gave me that name. It comes from ancient Rome, and it means warrior. At the end of the day, I think there's a lot to a name, and that's who I am. Some of my earliest memories were of my mom having to go out on the picket line to strike for better working conditions at the glass factory that she worked at. I've been involved in politics myself since I was 14 years old. My first real involvement was as a youth organizer for a Black tradesman union called Laborers Local 500. Every member of my family has been a part of the labor movement and the movement for workers' rights. It's to the core of who I am. I decided to run for city council last year as our neighborhood battled the pandemic, as we battled an opportunity to move forward in terms of how we approach public safety, as we battled an economic reckoning. And I know that it's going to take a bold and community-focused approach for us to move Harlem forward together. And so that's why I'm running. If you support me, you're going to get energetic, specific advocacy, and I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight with all of you.
Thank you, Mario, for that. And next up, I'll have Kristin.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Kristin Richardson Jordan. I go by KRJ or Kristin for Harlem. I am on a mission to disrupt Central Harlem District 9 with radical love. I think at its core, our community has seen the battles for liberation and we have seen the roots of socialism, but we haven't gotten to see us really shine as a community that has those radical roots, as a community that does believe in true human equality, which is socialism. And I am proud to say that I am an open and out socialists and abolitionists. And that's what I call for here in Harlem. And I'm not alone. I am on the street every day and I see others calling for it too. So when I talk about radical love and disrupting the district, I'm talking about serving people. I am on a mission to serve people. I got into this race mainly because our current city councilman voted for new jail sites. And I was part of a movement of no new jails, that we could close Rikers without erecting new jails. And that has continued to this day, that I continue to advocate for. What can we do in our community instead of jail? And our district especially has the highest incarceration rates in Manhattan, and we need to address that. My Harlem platform literally spells out Harlem. I'm third generation from Harlem. I love my community. The H is holding police accountable and abolition. A for actually affordable housing, and housing is a human right. R for redistribution of wealth and resources. Like I said, I am a socialist. It's taking care of those most in need and most oppressed. L for living longer, which is care for the seniors. E for education and environmental justice, and M for meaningful change. If elected, I will also be the first out LGBTQ person in this seat. I will also be the first Black queer representative on city council from any seat. I think part of what we need to advocate when we talk about Black to the ballot and voting and voter engagement is we need to have leaders who look like our community and respectfully reflect different parts of our community. We don't always need to have the same straight Black males running.
Thank you, Kristin. And next, Pierre.
Hi, yes, Tatiana, thank you so much to the Afro Socialists and Socialists of Color Caucus for giving us the opportunity to speak about these important issues in Harlem. Thank you to Bianca Cunningham as well. My name is Pierré Gooding and I'm running for City Council in District 9. We've done much work since my first run for office in 2017 when we spoke about lowering the AMI to make sure that the housing in Harlem was actually affordable. And making sure that people stayed off the streets, locking up Republican state Senate candidates that were doing bad things to Harlemites. We've been doing the work since that point. Recently, we brought home 800 American Ghanaians who were stuck overseas due to closed borders. That was a case that we took to the fore. And that's the type of advocacy we want to see in Harlem. We need to make sure now that we are in a pandemic that we have the type of advocacy that has been lacking for quite some time. We've seen our community disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. We are currently calling for an increase in what we need for vaccinations, and to keep our schools safe. We need to make sure that we have avid rapid testing in our schooling. We're calling for that immediate change. So we've been doing the work. I'm very proud of the legal work that we've been doing and also the advocacy generally. I believe the community is ready for positive change and we're ready to bring it. So when we talk about things like defunding the NYPD, these are very important issues, but we have to make sure that we have the budget plans to do it. When we talk about school integration, we have to make sure we have a plan. I was a teacher. I've seen these things from the inside, what it takes. I'm a lawyer. We've got to get these laws changed. So there's much to do in Harlem, and I'm looking forward to having the conversation.
Thank you, Pierre, and thank all of the candidates tonight for introducing yourselves and telling us what you're about. So next, we're going to go into the question segment. We can just keep tonight going in the same order we've been going, if that's okay with everyone. So I'll start out with Mario. The first question is, by how much would you support cutting the NYPD's budget? We want specific numbers, so we threw out some numbers like 1 billion or 3 billion. And we also have a second part to that question. What have you organized around this?
I want to see at least 1 billion cut from the NYPD budget. It's clear that our budget reflects our priorities. And not only do people on this call agree, the Afro Socialist Caucus, but people who aren't on this call agree. We cannot continue to fund NYPD to oppress our community. So I want to see at least 1 billion, and I've been very clear about that all year. We've been marching, we've been protesting. I've been in the streets all year. You know, over the course of this summer, I was proud to work with many others around this city to be a part of the uprising and the movement for Black lives that happened in New York City. I'm not here to claim that I caused anything specific to happen, but I was certainly a part of that. And I think many others will attest that I was a leader in doing what I could to bring out people in my network, in my community, who might have stayed on the sidelines to that movement. And so I'm in support of 1 billion cut. And I never had to go to a class or read a book or do anything like that to understand the reality of police oppression in our community. I have people I grew up with in the sandbox who are literally sitting in prison right now. And I'm sitting here on this call with you guys debating about what we should do. It's an honor to be here. This isn't hypothetical for me. This is my family, and you can count on me that I'm going to be a vocal advocate for reining in the NYPD budget, and I'm not the only one who feels that way.
Thank you, Mario. And next up, Kristin, would you like me to repeat the questions?
You could repeat it. I do know it, but you could repeat it.
No problem. So the first question is, by how much would you support cutting the NYPD's budget? And the second question is, what have you organized around this?
Okay, so to answer the first part of your question, and I've been really a strong leader on defunding, the ideal NYPD budget is zero. I have said this openly because I am an abolitionist. And what I mean by that is that my vision for a better world, and it's not just mine, it's rooted in a lot of African thought. It's rooted in like Black liberation struggle. It's rooted in history of Harlem and other Black freedom and Black freedom movement. But the vision is a world without cops and a world without jails. And what that means is that we have put up the social supports and services enough that we are actually addressing root causes of violence. So what it means is that we actually are moving towards a nonviolent world. So I say the ideal budget is zero. Specifically, I would call for a $3 billion cut on the road to that. I know that there is different mayoral candidates calling for different things, but I know specifically that Diane Morales has called for a $3 billion cut. So I would stand with that. And I would be vocal, just like I have been now, about the ideal budget. And in terms of movement, I have co-led and then actually led demonstrations in Harlem, as well as in a takeover of Columbus Circle, as well as the defund movement when we were actually protesting at the city budget hearing, where there was a call to cut NYPD by 1 billion, and where we failed at that, where there was some smoke and mirrors and the budget was shifted and it wasn't actually defunding. So I've also been part of Black Lives Matter movement and led a Black Lives Matter march here in Central Harlem District 9. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, I led a march to end rape culture, which is very much tied with policing, to end rape culture and patriarchy in the district as well.
Thank you, Kristin. And Pierre, would you like me to repeat the questions?
No, I would decrease by 2 billion. I believe we could get to that. Brandon West, who AfroSoc supports in the 36th district, is calling for 2 billion, although he says he has a realistic estimate for 1 billion. I think if you are smart with budget and numbers, you know how to shift this money around, because a budget crisis is coming down the pike for the next 3 years. Because of the pandemic, we're going to be about $20 billion in debt. So lots of organizations are going to be defunded by default. I think we can get to $2 billion, especially if we increase our output and volume and make sure that we have the money to put into the programs that we are advocating for, like mental health awareness and mental health organizations that are taking over for the NYPD and subways, so that we don't have the crisis that's currently occurring. We can do it, but we have to be smart, and we have to have people who understand numbers, understand how to change these laws.
Thank you. So earlier I said I would go in the same order. I'm actually going to switch that around to be fair to everyone. So each question, sorry, Mario, you were waiting.
I was liking that.
I had a talk with my team and that wasn't the best. So each question, I'll just switch up the order, okay? So for the next question, Kristin will go first. And this is the question. Do you oppose the borough-based jails plan? You mentioned something earlier about it, but you could go into detail. And will you support the immediate closure of Rikers Island without new jails? So Kristin?
Yes and yes. Yes and yes. And I've been about this since the beginning, when it was not popular, before George Floyd, before others were saying defund, I was saying defund. And I think that's important to point out because I think true leadership is about doing the right thing when it's not so convenient or maybe not the popular topic, right? The closure of the closure of Rikers is something that we could have had, should have had already. There isn't a need to keep Rikers open, and there is not a need to build new borough-based jails. And anyone who has actually studied the numbers on that knows that to be true. It has to do with us criminalizing things that are poverty, that could be addressed with other things. It has us criminalizing things that are related to mental and emotional health. And that's not necessary. And we could easily close Rikers with no new jails, and we should. And I will definitely stand up for that.
Thank you, Kristin. Next, I'll call Pierre.
Yes, I'm for the borough plan, and I'm also for closing Rikers. It's time. It's been time. What I have a problem with is the fact that there was no coherent plan to close Rikers. It was said that we were going to close it in 10 years, and then that was that. I think we need coherent plans. One thing that I also was astonished by is that Staten Island wasn't getting new jails and every other borough was. I think that's patently unfair and something that went overlooked and something we need to revisit. But I'm, like Kristin said, not for new jails. I'm for making sure that our education system's built up with those same dollars that we've been using to send Black and brown people to jail for decades. So we have to reallocate this budget in serious ways to make sure it's going to education, going to housing, going to the things that we know are going to increase Black excellence instead of incarcerating our people.
Thank you, Pierre. And next, I'll call on Mario. You're on mute.
Thank you. No, I strongly disagree with the council's decision to open up borough-based jails. I oppose the construction of any new jails. I support the closure of Rikers. And not only that, but I believe the best thing you can get in a council member and what Harlem needs is a council member who's actually going to be able to effectively advocate for this and build a coalition, not only within Harlem, but across the city. If you support me, what you're going to get is you're going to get somebody who's going to be able to work with other people and partner and build consensus across the city to actually be able to implement these things through energetic, visible, community-driven advocacy. So yes, I support the closure of Rikers. I don't support any more jails. Again, I never had to study anything to learn about jail. Many people I grew up with are sitting in jail right now, and it's something I think about every day. And it's a core part of the reason why I'm even running for this office. So I totally oppose it, and I'll be very vocal about it, as any Harlem representative should be.
So I have a follow-up question for all of you. You all oppose new jails, but a very popular question to this issue is, what's the solution for the here and now? And what is your plan to decarcerate Rikers and the other facilities that do exist? And another part to that question is, if there are going to be no new jails, how do you plan to address the inequities in the current borough-based jails that exist? Because a lot of the feedback to no new jails is about the fact that the jails that do exist have really prehistoric conditions where people suffer. So Kristin, I'll ask you to go first.
Yeah, I think we need to flip the whole thing on its head and really talk about safety and what that means and what that looks like. I have personally experienced false arrests. So I have been handcuffed and I have been taken and I have been behind bars. And the experience of that was incredibly dehumanizing. And that's something that I think we don't talk about or think about enough, right? Is what are we actually going to do to address the human element of the situation? What are we going to do to actually decrease violence and increase community? So what I want to do is talk about how we de-escalate situations. So right off the bat, one immediate thing I think we can implement right now is we could have first responders who are not police. There's a case here in Harlem with Muhammad Ba, whose mother, Hawa Ba, I am proud to say has endorsed my campaign. She called 911 to get an ambulance for her son when he had a psychotic break, and instead police showed up and shot him, and now he's been lost. And I think, not just in cases of police shooting, but also in cases of arrest in our incarceration system, we can right now start implementing first responders that are de-escalating and that it is based on restorative justice and on mental and emotional health as opposed to incarceration. With the argument about the jails themselves, I think we need to be doing a divest invest model in general. So we need to be divesting from prison system and investing in alternatives to incarceration.
Thank you, Kristin. And as a group, I think we all want to send our condolences to the Ba family as well. And Pierre, I'll ask you to go next.
Yeah, I think this is a hypercritical issue, and I think the laws need to be changed to reflect what we're talking about. When we're talking about incarceration, when 90% of the incarcerated are Black and brown, it is an issue of both how the laws are structured and how the laws are being impacted in that community, how they're being pushed on the community. So we have to take a look from top to bottom at every law that is negatively impacting Harlem, change that, and you can do it at a city council level. It should be being done right now with basically 51 Democrats there, but you have to do this. And then you have to take a look at the laws that we currently have that are being implemented in a discriminatory manner. If you start to do that on a macro level, you can decrease the amount of people we're sending to Rikers and ruining their lives because they get a criminal record once they take a settlement. And then we can start creating real change. But right now, we've talked about these issues for decades, and things are not changing. It's time to actually do something. In an illegal capacity, I do plan to make these changes.
Thank you, Pierre. And Mario?
Yes, thank you. The definition of courage is showing resolve when the winds are in your face. Early in 2020, activists fought very hard to reform the bail system in the city and win hard-fought improvements in equity in terms of getting folks out of jail. We then quickly went into a pandemic where millions of people lost their jobs, thousands of our elders in the city have died, and people of all ages. And some are trying to conflate an economic crisis and what comes with an economic crisis with progressive criminal justice policy. We need to hold the line. And right now, it's a very critical period in which people who at least showed up for this call need to hold the line and continue to stand for progressive criminal justice policy, because there are going to be folks who try to twist and turn that into things that it's not. What are we going to do to decarcerate? I mean, I think this is one of those questions where like everything has just been said, everybody just hasn't said it. I agree with Kristin. I agree with Pierre. It's simple. We need to invest in education. We need to invest in opportunity for young people who are at risk. I was that kid. I'm only here on this call due to educational opportunities and mentorship programs. When the city budget, when we realized there was going to be a strong gap in the city budget in June and in May, a so-called progressive administration, the first thing they sought to do was cut the summer youth employment program. What the heck? These things are real. And so we almost don't even need to talk about these things when there's money to invest in opportunities to prevent kids from being on the street and being idle and being bored. These are real life situations, and you have to fight for them, and you have to be vocal. You have to be specific, and that's what people are going to get out of me. And so I agree with all that. I think the last question, what are you going to do to address the condition of jails? I'll be honest with you. I'm not quite at the point where I have a super detailed answer on that. I can tell you, by the time we get to June, I will. But the way that I go about approaching any position that I hold on any issue is by looking to folks who are directly impacted. So as we go through that, I will be reaching out to folks who are incarcerated, reaching out to folks who are working with incarcerated people, and coming up with a solution that is community driven.
Thank you, folks. I'll now move on to the next question. So the next question is, we're all talking about crime and safety. Should public schools have police officers? Sometimes they're referred to as school safety officers. Yes or no? And how do you feel about the presence of these school safety officers in our schools? Pierre, I'll ask you to go first.
Yes, as a teacher, I feel that it's time to end the NYPD presence in our schools. We need to switch to a model where we have mental health experts in our schools, individuals who know what they're doing and provide safety for our students without the threat of violence and the overhanging of a police presence in our schools doesn't send the right signal to our students or to our community. It's time to change that. I was a teacher. I've seen what this presence actually looks like and how damaging it is to our students and their psyche. I would call for that change immediately. And it's something that we should do. So again, these are things that we shouldn't talk about. They should be already being done by the current city councilors. And if they're not going to do it, we need to do it. So it's a quick, simple yes on making sure that there are no cops in our schools and making sure that we have the right individuals to keep our kids safe.
Thank you, Pierre. Mario?
Right now, there are more police in New York City public schools than there are counselors and school psychologists. We're spending more on police officers in New York City schools than we are on after-school enrichment programs. Absolutely, I support the removal of the New York City Police Department from public schools. Most parents that I talk to also agree with that. These people aren't keeping our kids any more safe. We're using Band-Aid solutions to try to address a deeper issue of inequity in our public education system, and we're putting precious dollars in the wrong priority buckets. If you support me, you're going to get someone who vocally opposes that, who's going to build support and consensus, and not only talk about it now, but we have to keep the energy and the consensus around this that has existed all of 2020 through all of this year, through January 2022, and on through those votes in the budget. That's what this is about translating everything that we are already in agreement on into real public policy, and that's what you're going to get from me.
Thank you, Mario. And Kristin?
Yeah, so I'm definitely for the removal of cops from schools. I'm also for the removal of whatever we're disguising cops as, school safety or whatever, from the schools. I do not believe in punitive models. I believe in restorative justice models. And I have a lot to say on education because I am a teacher, and the platform that I have is unique, and no other council candidate is calling for it, but I have a developed education platform that is actually about expanding what is our current community school model. And what it involves is having the school be a one-stop shop for all the needs of students. So it's psychological and mental and emotional health, but it's also plugging that student and their family into healthcare, into housing, into other community resources. It's bringing local nonprofits into the school and building that connection as well. And it's changing our curriculum as well, because we need to understand who we are and our children of Harlem. I mean, we are over 60% Black. The children need to be getting a Black studies curriculum that they understand their history and heritage and culture, and the history and heritage and culture of Harlem. So that it feeds into our psychology as much as anything else. And it all has to do with making schools a place for growth as opposed to a place of punitive models and punishment and cops in schools and a school to prison pipeline. We have to completely shatter the pipeline.
Thank you. The next question revolves around education as well. The question is, do you support the expansion of charter schools? And if you do, why do you support it? And if you do not, please let us know why as well. I'll start out with Mario.
No, I do not support the expansion of charter schools because I believe that a strong city, my vision of New York City in 2030 is a vision that it includes a city where every kid has the opportunity to go to a public school and get an amazing education system. It is simply not scalable to create a charter, an unlimited charter system where we're expecting charter schools to do what the public school system should be doing. That's the problem we're in. And the issue with that is that we have scarce public dollars that are going to charter schools that aren't even being held as accountable, that could be going to public schools where kids in Harlem don't even have the proper equipment to play in the playgrounds. Look, I respect, honestly, and I'm the type of person who is going to work with everyone. I'm going to go to every room, every Zoom, every block. It doesn't matter. And I respect people in our community, particularly in Harlem, who are very sensitive about this issue and look at these charter schools. They've been able to deliver some better results for their kids, and they're very passionate about it. I get that. I 100% get it. But what is Mario Rosser going to work for in terms of a long-term sustainable vision for education in this city? Is for investing in our public schools. And the reality is we have scarce resources, and we're going to do that. Now, are there charter? Do I want to eliminate charter schools? And am I going to fight for that? No, I think there are some charter schools that are doing a solid job. But do I think that's a long-term strategy for quality education? I don't really think so. I don't really think that's what the results. Not even think that's not what the data has shown, and it's certainly not what my lived experience has shown as someone who's only here through quality education. And so, no, I do not support the expansion of charter schools, but I will work with everyone. But that is my long-term vision for education.
Thank you, Mario. And next, Pierre.
Yes, Tatiana, I'm for the expansion of grade schools all over Harlem, including expansion of charter schools because they are working here for the most part. And this is a serious subject. The school I was supposed to go to, Margaret Douglas, PS 36, is ranked 1984th out of 2,400 schools on School Digger. And so people would say, well, it's District 7, it's one block over from your district. Don't care about it. No, we've got to care about the schools all over Harlem, whether they're in our district or not, that are currently failing, that have been failing for 30 years. And so when people say that's charter schools' fault, it's actually not true. Our schools were failing much before charters were created in New York City. They were failing because we haven't taken care of our students or the facilities. We fought for 10 years to get air conditioners in our classrooms after I taught at IS 143, Eleanor Roosevelt Junior High, teaching 6th and 8th grade ESL. We saw decrepit conditions. We saw things that are clear discrepancies between communities. And so we have to do better. I'm for grade schools all over the place. If they're working, we want to increase that model. We want to take the things that work and put them in all of our schools. It's that simple. And I'll never be for taking away a resource in a community that we know works because it harms our students. And this is not for politics. This is about what is best for our children. I served as legal counsel at Success Academy. I've seen a model that works fairly well. We need to improve on it. We need to make sure that every student gets the best education in Harlem, and we will do that. But we need to increase the amount of grade schools in our community, not decrease them.
Thank you, Pierre. And Kristin?
So I am not for the expansion of charter schools. I firmly believe in developing our system, our public school system. I know that the root of charter schools, or at least what we were sold on back when they started, was that they were going to model things that could then, if successful, be implemented system-wide in our public schools. And that's a piece that is surely missing. And it is sorely missing. It is hurting our students. So I firmly stand against what I see as a two-tier education model. I believe that we need to really work on developing all of our schools. The schools should be palaces. Education is a human right. We should put the resources and money there, and develop my plan for education and use that as a model, and have Harlem, not just Harlem, but the whole city, really develop and have education be the backbone that it really should be in developing our whole larger community as well.
Thank you, Kristin. We will now move on to the next question. So this question is, do you support the SHSAT, the Specialized High School Admission Test? Also, do you support school screening, and do you support the gifted and talented programs? So I will ask Pierre first.
Yeah, I'm for the elimination of the SHSAT because it's currently harming our students in our community, particularly if you take a look at the numbers of some of the top specialized high schools in New York City. I think we have numbers like 70% of the students identify as Asian, as opposed to about 10% or maybe 7% of the students identifying as Black or brown. So there are clear problems with the outcomes from these tests. We need to make sure that our high schools give students an opportunity as opposed to being the sorts of places that are creating the discrepancies we're trying to fight against. So I'm ardently for making sure that our students end up at the best high schools and the best schools in general from pre-K, 3K on up. And so I think that's the type of work that has to be done now. And when you take a look at the numbers, I think it's been underreported what these discrepancies are in our schools. And we have to fix that right now because every year that goes by, you create more of a divide, and you create students that never had a chance because of the system we have in place. So clearly, I would like to see that change.
Thank you, Pierre. Kristin?
So I am not for the SHSAT. I am not for standardized testing in general. And as someone who has taught for over 10 years, I promise you there are deeper and more meaningful and more accurate ways to measure student achievement and potential than with these tests. And so I would really push for us to look at different ways to measure the students' achievement and potential. But I also want to bring us back really quickly to the root of the problem, which is, as I said before, the fact that we have two tiers of education to begin with. And what we have set up with these SHSAT tests is that is the pipeline to get out, right? We have one route where everyone is clamoring in order to get into the specialized high schools, because that becomes the route out of poverty. And what we're seeing is capitalism. And what we're fighting over is who gets to get into these specialized schools. And the fundamental problem is that why do we have a system where there are only a few schools and everyone's trying to get to them? Why don't we have a system where all the schools are doing the work and all the schools are feeding the students and all the schools are what they should be?
Thank you, Kristin. And Mario?
Yes, I oppose the SHAT, the SHATs, because it does not accurately represent the aptitude of our kids to be able to attend some schools that have some great facilities due to increased funding. But I think that's another issue that we're not even talking about. Within our community, there actually isn't total consensus on this issue. So I think when you think about who's going to be effective as a representative, you have to think about who's going to be able to bring folks who aren't totally in agreement about this issue. And the reality is, even within the building that I live, every person who has our skin color doesn't agree on this. They're like, well, I want my kid who's worked really hard to be able to have the opportunity to go to Stuyvesant or Brooklyn Tech. I mean, and we have to be able to communicate with them too, and those folks who don't necessarily agree with us. And what I say to them is that the reality is, Stuyvesant isn't doing for your kid what you think it is. It's not actually as quality as you think it is. And so with regard to gifted and talented programs, yeah, I think we need to bring those back up here to Harlem. I'm also in support of community school models and making sure that we have a culturally relevant and culturally sensitive curriculum for our kids, so they learn about their history and they are able to develop themselves in ways that are beyond just academic, but in terms of their character and personality. And that's what I support, and that's what I'm going to be talking about and building support for.
Thank you. So the next question is, would you support a primary challenger to Andrew Cuomo from the left? And if you would, please tell us why, and some brief views you have on Cuomo. I'll start with Kristin.
Yeah, heck yeah. I would definitely support a challenger from the left. I think, it's really unfortunate that the leader of the country was Trump. And so by some strange warped universe of comparison, Cuomo looked quite good because there was just somebody who was following basic science during the global pandemic. But I think that I don't think he's been strong or good for the city. I think he's far from what we need. As I said in my opening, I am a democratic socialist and abolitionist. So yes, further left, please. And I would support that person.
Thank you, Kristin. Mario?
I'm going to answer this question and then I got to go get my charger so this doesn't die. But yes, I would absolutely support a challenger to Andrew Cuomo. In general, I think that more competition is better. And particularly, I love the group of people who are my colleagues in this race, because I think that Harlem wins because we're all participating. And I wish more people actually participated in this particular forum. But yes, absolutely, I would support a challenger to Andrew Cuomo. I think it would depend on who that person is, what they bring to the table, what skills they bring to the table in terms of leadership. I will say this about Andrew Cuomo, because there are a lot of people who do have positive feelings about the governor, and I think that in this state we have to recognize and also communicate with those people. A lot of people feel that Andrew Cuomo was able to show some real leadership and shepherd this state through this crisis. And while we really pull the roof up, that might not be true. But I think we do need to recognize a lot of people feel that way, and make sure we continue to expand this tent and bring those people into and be able to keep those bridges open. And I'm the candidate. I'm going to go to every room, every Zoom, and every block.
Thank you, Mario. Next, Pierre.
I'll be right back.
Yes, I would support a third-party challenger from the left. This is why I think you need to have experience in these sorts of endeavors. I was chairman of a third party, the Reform Party in Manhattan, during the course of the last electoral cycle. And I think if we want these sorts of things to happen, we need people in city council on up that have done them before. And so I think that our constituents have to do their homework and take a look at what our candidates have been doing over the years. Like I said, I was the chairman for the Reform Party, a third party in Manhattan. And so I'll always advocate for third parties to be a part of the race and to have a different voice. I think that Cynthia Nixon did a great job in the last electoral cycle of moving the conversation to the left so that Cuomo had to respond to different policy initiatives. And so that conversation always has to happen. I think a third party challenger would, of course, respond to the debacle in the nursing homes. but also that's for individuals to take up legally as well. And so again, I think we need individuals at a city council level who understand what these laws are and how they should be utilized to make sure that everyone's held accountable. So I'm for third parties, and I'm for accountability.
Thank you, Pierre. So the next question is, would you accept an all expenses paid trip to Israel as an elected official? I'll start with Pierre.
No, I would not. I don't know where it would be coming from, first of all, but no matter the source, I think the how it would look would be scandalous. And these are the sorts of things we need to get out of politics. The amount of money that is going into slush funds from the city council budget on down is absurd and has to end. All the candidates talk about not taking PAC money. We don't take PAC money. We do things the right way. We just don't talk about it all the time. And I think that's the type of leadership that we need at a city council level. No, I would not take a all expenses paid trip to Israel. That's something I think you have to fund yourself if you want to do it.
Thank you, Pierre. And Mario? Mario, you were muted. You could start over, sorry.
Thank you for letting me know. No, I would not take an all expenses paid trip to Israel. From the principle of taking all expenses paid trips, I think it's ethically inappropriate for a person holding office. In terms of would I go to Israel in general, I know that this is an issue that is in the primary, and I want to be clear. Do I object in principle to visiting the nation of Israel? No, I don't actually, and I want to be honest about that. Do I fully understand every issue with regard to the BDS movement? I don't understand every part and context of that issue, but I do understand the basic premises, and there's a lot for me to learn. But what I can say, I'm about building bridges and not barriers. I'm about building bridges and not barriers. Am I going to be a person who's accepting all expenses paid trips from a certain lobby on one side or a certain lobby on the other side? No. But am I going to eliminate a bridge to a country that is really important for a lot of people who live in this city, particularly a country that has been a part of economic innovation and technology innovation that I think here in Harlem we could actually build some partnership with. But am I gonna take the all expenses paid trip on behalf of a lobby? No, I'm not. But do I oppose visiting a country in general? No, I don't either.
Thank you, Mario. And Kristin?
No, I would not take the expenses paid trip to Israel, but I do want to, not but, that's it, period. And I want to add that taking the expense paid trip to Israel isn't actually scandalous. It's actually the norm. It's actually considered completely acceptable that we have city council members who are doing this. And it's actually considered completely acceptable that we have all these ties to the Israeli government on a national level and all the way down to our local level. And I am someone who is pro-Palestine, and I actually feel there is real solidarity to be built between our community here in Harlem and the Palestinians. And I think we should really look at how we stand together in solidarity as people of color, and how we build with, you know, standing on the moral ground and standing in the truth of the matter, which is that we live in white supremacy, and that has to be addressed.
Thank you, Kristin, for that. Thank you, everyone. So we go on to the next question. Do you oppose the privatization of NYCHA versus RAD, which is rental assistance demonstration? And I will start with Kristin.
I definitely oppose the privatization of NYCHA. I oppose RAD. And I think we have some real work to do in terms of political education around this. And I will say that I and my team, we've been out and we've been doing that. We do mutual aid and wellness checks every day, but we also have been working on political outreach. And one of the things that I've seen in the 22 NYCHA developments that we have in this district, District 9, is that people get a lot of misinformation, and a lot of tenants are being lied to, that they're told that their repairs are going to be fixed if they privatize and they go with RAD. So no, I am not for it. I am firmly against it. And I will go a step further in saying that we need to be actively involved in doing political education and building with NYCHA tenants and organizers to stand against it.
Thank you, Kristin. Pierre?
Yes, I am opposed ardently to the privatization of NYCHA, and we've been working on this from before the time that it was a popular issue to sort of work on. There were housing organizations that were thinking about whether to advocate for privatizing NYCHA because of the myriad of debacles that had happened previously that were reported on in the papers. And ultimately, we were involved with making sure that those organizations did not advocate to privatize NYCHA, because we are aware that once we get rid of those properties, they will be lost in the community. And once they get turned over to private hands, it's a free-for-all, and ultimately our folks will be pushed out. Gentrification will ensue in a hyper way that we're trying to avoid writ large. So I am against the privatization of NYCHA, and I believe that if we do that, we're going to have some serious problems. So this is something that every city council, that's city councilor and city council candidate, has to be on the same page about, because once NYCHA gets privatized, it's going to be a free for all.
Thank you, Pierre. Mario?
I oppose the privatization of NYCHA. If we don't fight for it, St. Nicholas houses are going to look like Stuytown. That's what the privatization of NYCHA looks like. We can choose to fully fund NYCHA. We spent $11 billion to build 4 new jails all around the city. We spent money to build Hudson Yards, which took money that was allocated for public housing in Harlem to build an economic development project that Harlemites aren't even benefiting from. These are about priorities. People say there's no money. There's money. Now, do I recognize that fully funding public housing in New York City is an issue that's going to take strong leadership from the federal government, and that we need to have extremely strong partnership with our representatives? Representative Adriano Espriat sits on the House of Representatives Infrastructure Committee. Yvette Clark sits on the Public Housing Committee. Right now is an opportunity to get some stuff done. And I think this particular city council seat, considering the amount of NYCHA developments that my sister Kristin enumerated we have in the district, positions this particular seat as a credible voice to advocate from the ground on what needs to be done for the people. And so, yeah, I fully oppose the privatization of NYCHA. It's the wolves in sheep's clothing, and it's all about priorities.
Thank you, Mario. Next question is, do you oppose Amazon coming to Queens, the Inwood rezoning, the Flushing rezoning? And if you do oppose or support any of these, why or why not? I'll start out with Mario.
I did oppose the Amazon deal coming to Queens because I felt that, number one, it did not sufficiently go through a process of community engagement and community feedback that is critical to doing business in this city. New Yorkers aren't just going to accept anything. We're not desperate. You know, it's not that we're anti-business. Of course, New York City is a very a city where people are trying to start enterprises. And entrepreneurship is one of the top things that people talk about. When I go to my blocks in Harlem, that's what people are talking about. And so it's not that people don't want to do business, people don't want to get things done. It's that it has to be done in a community-focused way. And I think that the executives over at Amazon recognized that they messed up. In terms of the Inwood rezoning and the other one that you mentioned, I'm not at the position to speak on those at length right now because I need to do some more consulting with folks in those particular areas on those. But at a different time, I can follow up with your group about that. But in terms of the Amazon project, I think that it was not done in a way that was community focused, and that doomed it.
Thank you, Mario. And next, Kristin.
Yes, I did oppose the Amazon project. I also I'm firmly against any development without racial impact study. I also believe that what we need is to fundamentally dismantle and rebuild our whole zoning process. We need community rezoning that is really people-led and community-led, and anything that is not that, I'm gonna stand against and vote against. And let me be clear, when I say community-led, I mean actually community. I do not mean what we have so far in place as machine, including the so-called community board, which frankly is an overrepresentation of real estate and lobbyists. So, I mean, we need to drastically change the process. And until then, I will be opposing all rezonings.
Thank you, Kristin. And Pierre?
If I was the city council, we would have gotten that Amazon deal done. We are in a serious fiscal crisis. We'll have about $20 billion in debt overlay in the next 3 years for the city council to figure out. And without increasing output and volume from liberalization of policies, making sure that we have initiatives where people want to come to Harlem and come to New York City and spend their dollars, and initiatives like the Amazon deal. Yeah, were there problems? Absolutely. But we should have been able to sit down and figure them out, get jobs for the communities that we're talking about for our folks, make sure that those dollars come in. What we have now is a situation where we lost the Amazon deal. And again, the $20 billion that we're going to need to find, no one has a solution on how to find those dollars. So we can talk about things we don't want to do, but how are we going to make sure that this city doesn't fall apart from a lack of funds coming in? I think it's hyper necessary to get these deals done and make sure that we have the money to do the programs that we talk about every day and that we were talking about on this call. How do we make sure we have the dollars to increase teacher salaries? We are creative with what we do on the front end so that we don't have to increase taxes, which will send further amounts of people out of the city, which is currently happening. So we have to be creative, and that deal should have been done.
Thank you, Pierre. And Kristin, you would like to respond to that?
Yes, because I want to address this question of like how we stimulate jobs in the community. I think we do it through supporting small and local owned business. And when I say small business, I mean actual small business, because the SBA already has it misdefined because it includes up to 500 employees. So I really mean micro businesses, 20 or less employees, which is the bulk of businesses. And I think we support that with grants. I've called for grants to Black-owned business owners specifically, mainly because we have a huge disparity and we're 20% of the population and we're 2% of the business owners. I also think that we do it with a land value tax to raise revenue, because right now the wealthiest among us get to stay wealthy and make more wealth by sitting on vacant lots and vacant properties, and that would help raise revenue. I think we need to challenge the narrative of austerity measures that we are somehow not going to be able to combat the austerity. I think that it's fundamentally flawed. There is wealth in this city, a lot of wealth.
Tatiana, if I could just respond very quickly. I do think we need to support our small businesses. We actually have a plan to make sure that tax dollars go to small businesses that hire our folks in the district, the Gooding plan, which is on our website. And also I legally represent small businesses in this community that both have gotten dollars, both locally and federally through our initiatives and through our work, and also that have shut down because they did not have the funds to make it through this pandemic. This is hyper serious, and every day that goes by that we don't have plans to get these dollars to our small businesses, including an NYC stimulus, is a day lost. And so, yeah, we're for small businesses, we're for advocacy, but we have to get this done now, and we have to get those dollars to those small businesses before they go out of business.
Thank you to everyone. And that was a great back and forth debate to respond to these questions. Just to be clear, we were scheduled to end at 8 o'clock, but we started a little bit late. So we're going for 10 minutes, if that's okay with everyone. Okay.
That's
and
right.
3 more questions. So we'll get to those and then we'll move forward. So the next question is, do you support, these are 3 different items. Do you support the full decriminalization of sex work, of fare evasion, and drug possession? So I'll start out with Pierre first.
The answer is yes on all 3. I'm a libertarian. I believe in making sure that the laws work for us, not against us. And when you talk about the capital overlay that I just described, and making sure that we increase volume and make sure that we make up for the $20 billion that we're going to be in debt, we need to make sure that those sorts of initiatives, whether it's marijuana legalization or prostitution or gambling, are pushed to the fore so that we can raise revenue. We've seen these models work in other states and other cities, so there's no reason that we can't be creative and bring these things to New York so that people can safely enjoy business here and do what it is they need to do to feed their families. And so we have to decrease the amount of red tape that we have that ensures that no businesses currently operate. And we have to liberalize our laws to make sure that we increase the amount of money we're taking in so that, again, we can improve our schools, make sure that we have affordable housing for folks, make sure that people are not sleeping on benches like we currently have. We're the #1 city for homelessness. So these things are integrally tied together, and I am for liberalizing all of the laws that you mentioned.
Thank you. Mario?
Thank you, Tatiana. And you were so quick with it. I didn't actually catch the last point that you said.
I'll repeat it. So it's full decriminalization of sex work, fare evasion, and drug possession.
Yes. Yes. Well, I support the decriminalization of all 3, and I think we're already there. Now I think it's about creating the optimal structure for it so that our community benefits. And I'll talk about particularly the issue of drug possession. I think at this point in time, we're coming upon a period in New York State where we are looking seriously at marijuana legalization and creating the structures around that. I think this is a real opportunity for this state to show leadership, and particularly this community where people are still locked up from the war on drugs from Harlem, in jail right now, for the leaders and elected representatives in this community to be very vocal about making sure that any tax structures, any bureaucratic structures around marijuana legalization strongly benefit Black and brown people in our community. And so I think that's what this debate needs to be about moving forward, what that looks like, how we do it best, because we've seen other states not get this right. We've seen other cities not get this right. I think everybody in New York City agrees on these issues. Well, I think we will win the vote on the issue, but exactly what it looks like, I think that's where we need to go. And I think you need someone who's going to be able to lead and influence amongst a crowd of people who generally agree, but don't know what it should look like.
Thank you, Mario. And Kristin?
Yes, I'm for decriminalization on all 3. I have fought for the decriminalization of sex work for when it was not popular. When it was a marginal issue, I was calling for decriminalization of sex work, and it's a cornerstone issue from my LGBTQ family, and you know it's absolutely necessary. The fare evasion, I have advocated for a free and accessible subway. I think it's absolutely ridiculous, not only the criminalization of the fares, but what we are spending in it, the money doesn't add up. We're spending more to police this issue than we would if we could actually just make the train free. And then 3, in terms of possession, yes, I am for decriminalizing that. I am for, in general, a total flip the script on how we look at drug use. And yes, I'm for legalization of marijuana, but I also mean in general, we need to be looking at treatment models, and we need to be looking at how drug use gets addressed systemically, psychological and emotional addressing of drug use, as opposed to criminalizing drug use. And that is the model already used in wealthy and mostly white communities, and it should be, our community deserves that as well.
Thank you, Kristin. So Kristin and Mario, both of you briefly touched on the next question, so you can feel free to skip through pieces of it. The question is, do you support cannabis, and what actions do you take to ensure cannabis justice? What is your understanding and desire for how marijuana justice will work for our communities? So Kristin, you just kind of touched on that, so I'll let you continue into that question if you like.
Yes, yeah. So like I said, I'm for legalization. I definitely am for cannabis justice. I have been working on a joint statement actually with two other candidates in other districts. All three of us being Black candidates, all three of us representing the highest three districts where there has been arrest for marijuana. And we are putting together a full statement plan on that, which will be up on the website. But absolutely, we need cannabis justice because our community has been hardest impacted, and we need to make sure that when it is legalized, those dollars and that revenue gets to our community.
Thank you, Kristin. And then Mario, would you like to go, please?
Yeah, and I want to actually further answer this question and even the previous question. You know, when you ask people in Harlem, what are the top three issues facing the neighborhood? Most people will tell you we have a serious issue on 125th Street in terms of drug, substance use, in terms of houselessness. When I look at that issue, I look at it from the perspective of the people who are actually out there. A lot of us just walk by. 2 years before I was born, my own mother decided she didn't want to smoke crack cocaine anymore. She used crack from 1985 to 1989. I spent most of my childhood growing up attending AA, CA, and NA meetings. When I walk down 125th Street, I see people who have a great future in terms of recovery. And what we cannot do is get caught up in the criminalization and the demonization of people who are going through real things. And I look at this from a family perspective. A lot of times, those folks who are dealing with substance use, previously, they were selling the substances. Some of them are on 125th Street. Some of them are on Rikers Island. Some of them are in other facilities. Some of them have been there for decades for marijuana possession. And so again, moving forward, I'm going to have a lot more to say in terms of specific structures, but I think that's going to be a key issue that we can actually win on in terms of leading the formation of what that looks like for New York. And I'll have a lot to say on that coming forward.
Thank you, Mario. And Pierre?
Yes, I'm for the legalization of marijuana. I was for it when it wasn't popular in 2017, when Governor Cuomo was still on the fence or against the legalization. If people care to Google Pierré Gooding, you'll see that we have interviews where we talk about this. And so I put my career on the line to advocate for some of these positions, including this, because it's so important to our community, because so many of our folks are locked up off of minor marijuana possession charges and then go to Rikers and cut a deal and then have that on their record for the rest of their lives, which is something that we've actually unwound in certain cases in a legal capacity, but not everyone has access to legal counsel, despite our efforts. And so I think this has to be done. It should have already been done. If you take a look at other states and what they're doing and the amount of tax revenue they're able to raise and the safety issues that turnout not to be the case because these things are implemented in a sensible fashion. We're losing dollars every day that we don't liberalize these policies. And so it's really a no-brainer what should be done. And taking a look at the amount of debt we're going to have in the next 3 years, you have to do these things. You have to be creative. You have to liberalize our laws so that we can make up that capital and we don't have to raise taxes.
Thank you, Pierre. So this will be our last question. I know I said we'll end at 8:10. It's a few minutes over. My apologies, but we can just make this answer short and to the point. The question is, are you a member of DSA? Do you identify as a democratic socialist? Why or why not? A few of you kind of answered that. So if you want to just elaborate on the part you did not, feel free to do so. And I will start with Kristin.
Yes, I'm a member of DSA. I am a democratic socialist. I'm a proud Black, queer, democratic socialist abolitionist, as I said in my opening. I think, for our community, it's real. I think socialism isn't something that we need to only identify with as like this intellectual brainchild of Karl Marx, right? That the socialism is also in these community conversations that I'm having almost every day with people about the village of Harlem. That's an Afrocentric African concept. And what we talk about when we speak of socialism, we're really talking about humanitarianism. We're talking about the right for people to have basic human treatment, human things. And so, yeah, I'm a proud democratic socialist. Absolutely.
Thank you, Kristin. Pierre?
No, I identify as a libertarian, so I am not currently a DSA member. What I would say is that I work with DSA members on a daily basis in the community because there is a large presence in Harlem, and we're taking those views in. And when I speak to folks, the ideas that we have are fairly synonymous. We're talking about universal basic income. Okay, well, how do we get that done? How do we make sure that we have enough money to pay everybody $1,000 a month if that's where we want to get to? So I think it's not about the label that we slap on somebody. It's how that person is going to creatively get to the policies that everyone on this call has advocated for. And so I think that the title means much less than what you're doing for Harlem and what you're doing for this city. I'll always be here to work with our socialists and with every other organization, DSA, AfroSoc, and any other caucus or organization that wants to creatively make sure that we have a better future in Harlem. We're here for. So I'm appreciative to AfroSoc and the DSA for having this forum. And you know that you have a partner in us.
Thank you, Pierre. And Mario?
Yes. If I'm going to be completely honest, I don't typically call myself a socialist. I haven't since the 2-year period when I was in junior high and I read Animal Farm by George Orwell. I was definitely with it then. But since then, if you talk to people about Mario, what they tell you wouldn't be, oh, Mario says he's a socialist. Mario says that. But I can tell you what, I'm here. Typically, what I do claim in terms of a label, I do claim the title of social democrat. In that the reality is, I do believe in entrepreneurship. I do believe in strong social safety nets that protect people in terms of healthcare, in terms of quality of life, in terms of a basic contract that we all agree together to do collectively. But do I also have a career in business personally? I do. And so I don't know that I can actually call myself a socialist, but I'm here, I'm in support. And like I said a few times throughout this conversation, I'm going to go to every room, every Zoom, and every block. And at the end of the day, it's not about a socialist, I'm a Harlemite. And I think that's what counts. But I'm here for you guys whenever you need me. And it's great to have participated tonight.
Thank you, Mario. So now we're going to end this portion. I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. I particularly want to thank our candidates, Kristin Richardson Jordan, Pierré Gooding, and Mario Rosser. We're going to have a Rosser. I'm sorry.
People been mispronouncing. I've been letting it slide. I'm like, now I'm about to start saying stuff, you know.
And no, you got to tell people your names.
Yeah.
Right, so that's fine. So again, thank all of you for joining us tonight. We really appreciate this. Our community needs this. And we're going to have a quick break now while we get set up for our next session. So everyone have a good night. Thank you for attending, and we will be in contact with you soon.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.